I wanted to be a teacher, actually, what I really wanted to do. Is I knew that with my bachelor's, and then what happened was I finished my bachelor's at UNK, did my student teaching in Columbus, Nebraska, at the middle school there. They wanted to hire me. A couple other districts nearby offered me a job. At that point, I didn't have a valid social security number, so I wasn't able to obtain a teaching license. And so I have a bachelor's degree, and it was that summer after I had finished my student teaching, and I had to tell everybody no. I told my principal at that middle school, I said, here's the reason why I'm telling you no. A lady who funded a lot of my bachelor's program through a private donation, and I never met her until my master's graduation, and we just messaged back and forth through regular mail and writing letters. And so I'd get her letters, she'd get my letters, and I would never even know her name or address. I just knew her as the Dream Scholarship donor. I would give my letters to the financial aid director. She'd send them to the lady. The lady would send them to her, and she'd hand me her letters. But she obviously is someone who's very important in this whole piece to where I am now. But she obviously, through the letter, I told her, thank you, I won't be teaching, and here's the reasons why, and she knew that. And then she decided to fund my master's program. And so, in the hopes that I would then, in some way or another, whether become more marketable or just hopefully hold off, 2.5, 3 years until hopefully something in the legislation would come by that would grant me an opportunity, and that's what came about, was the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. And so I finished 3 years later, and then that summer after I had finished, President Barack Obama announced DACA, which is a temporary blessing, and then I was able to start here the following school year. And so those things have kind of fallen into place, whether by accident or by miracle or by luck, or people along the way helping me get there. I think all of those things, and that's where I am now. So we're what's called a mixed status family.
Okay.
My older brother was born in Orange County, California. He's a U.S. citizen. By birth, he's a U.S. citizen. And it's me, and I was born in Mexico. My younger brother was born in Mexico and moved. When we moved here, he was a baby. So he didn't even talk yet. He was about 5, 6, 7, 8 months old. And so he's in the same situation that I'm in. And then the youngest one is my sister. She just turned 21, and she was born in Schuyler, so she's a U.S. citizen. My parents have been here actually since they were about, my dad was about 16. This was like late 70s that my parents have been in the United States. My parents were, my mom became pregnant the second time, and I was the one she was pregnant with. At that point, this was like the early to mid, I was born in 1986, so this has been like 80 to 85. My brother, at that point, my older brother, he was about 4 years old. My dad, Orange County is about an hour from the Mexico-U.S. border, and he would work as a landscaper without documentation. And so a lot of those places pay in cash, so at that point there wasn't a whole lot that you needed to prove. You just go out there and you do the job and they pay you cash.
Right.
And so it was still dangerous. Even back then they didn't have the technology that they do now. So what they would do then, this is obviously all from what my parents told me, or my uncles, my dad's brothers would tell me, is that you would go and work. Since you're close to the border, immigration was nearby. They're anywhere within 100 miles of the border. And if they caught you, they'd stop you and say, can we see your documentation? Well, my dad didn't have any. So what they would do is they would say, okay, you're coming with us. They would get you in their vehicle. They would drop you off in Tijuana, Mexico, and they would say, don't come back. Well, my dad would come back with my brother and my mom being there. It was still dangerous, and so my mom and dad sat down and talked and said, look, we have a 4-year-old son. You're pregnant again, do we want to risk staying here and something could happen to you and I'll become a widow? Or do we just say, you know what, even though things aren't ideal in Mexico, we don't have that worry of what if something happens to you because you're deported. So my mom was a few months pregnant with me. I don't know if it was between 2 to 5 months pregnant with me. And then we moved back to Monterrey, Mexico, which is the third largest city in Mexico in the northern part. Had a lot of industries there. So I was kind of joke that I was made in the USA, but I was born in Mexico. There was a lot of gang activity where we were at. There's a lot of violence. And so I remember seeing people being stabbed, or that, not literally, but being on the ground after they'd been stabbed, and the police coming, and there was a lot of danger in our neighborhood. And my dad was the only one working, and so my dad's brothers had said, you know what, why are you living there? It's dangerous, you need to get your kids out of there. So we moved back to the United States. I came back across, I would have been 6, undocumented. And then we lived in California for a year and then moved to Nebraska. And we stopped at a couple of different towns for very short periods of time. Lexington, then Overton, then Columbus, and then ended up in Schuyler, Nebraska. And that's where, since the 4th grade, I went to school there, graduated there, high school, and then went out to Kearney. Was there in Kearney for a total of 8 years, and have been living in the Crete area since I've graduated in 2012. I think it's one of those things that, like, it's hard to explain, because I think most people just get in their car and drive, and they drive, and you don't think about it, right? Or you think about, for any point, the police or anybody would ask you, can I see some identification? You just show it to them, right? You walk into a bar, or you want to grab a bottle of wine. You don't think about it, you just show them your ID. Obviously all those things were not a possibility for me, the ability to drive. Living in Schuyler and in Kearney, kind of rural Nebraska, and you can't just get on a bus or get on a train and head from one destination to another, and so it's a lot of carpooling, a lot of having to coordinate with a lot of people, and it's a challenge for sure. I don't want people to feel sorry for the situation that I've been in, because I don't. I think I try to flip things around and try to look at how this has made me who I am today, and how this has made me a better person. I don't know if I'd be where I'm at right now if I would have had documentation. And I mean, I question that sometimes. If I wouldn't have had those obstacles, would I be in a situation? Would I be a school counselor? I don't know. Because like I said, if I would have had that social security number, I probably would have stuck with teaching, and maybe that would have been, now I'm considering maybe going into administration, because I kind of like, I know I miss the classroom, but I like being in that position where you can make building-wide or district-wide changes. So I always like to think of those obstacles as opportunities, and that's what I try to tell our students, right? Is that, okay, I have no problem with showing emotion, I have no problem with crying, and then at the end of when we're done crying, okay, what are we going to do? What's our plan? And turning those difficult situations into opportunities. Deferred action means you're deferred from being deported. You don't become a priority. President Obama and his administration had said, look, we have this group of young people who are not a threat to national security. They're learning English, they're in school or in the military, and we want to keep them in our country, and we want them to contribute to our economy. And so it deferred being deported, right? Or you did not become a priority to be deported. It allowed for anybody with DACA to obtain a social security number to be able to get employment authorization, or being able to legally work. You have to apply before October 5th, but your 2 years would have to be up between now and March 5th. Okay. Mine falls just right after that. And so I will be at Crete. If everything goes the way it is now, this will be my last year at Crete.
So you do everything that's asked of you. You pay your taxes, you pay into the retirement plan, you pay Social Security. You're working hard, working with these kids. What do you think the future holds for this? What do you see happening?
Sorry.
That's okay.
My tears aren't because of I'm worried about where I'm gonna go. I'm the part that bugs me is knowing how much I fall in love with this place, the kids, and not being able to continue that. People say like, your parents made a mistake. I don't think so. I think they did what they thought was best at the time, and now we're in the situation, but I don't fault them. I thank them for what they've done, because I don't think I would have had this opportunity in my home country, but it's about leaving here. It's not about where I'm gonna go. It's about not being able to be around the kids every time, all the time, and try to help them the best you can. Some days are good, some days are not as good, and sometimes you feel like you're not doing everything that you can, but just gotta get up and try again the next day. But for me personally, I'm not, I don't know. The DREAM Act was introduced in 2001 on the national level. That was back in 2001, and so that would have been my end of my freshman year of high school, was when we first heard about the DREAM Act. And we'd heard that potentially something was gonna come along that was gonna help young people who had not made their own decision, were in this country and were contributing, and so that would have been a permanent thing. That's been around since 2001, so it's not anything new, and I think that's why I have not been, I don't know if it's my own way of dealing with things, if it's a defense mechanism of like, no, I'm okay, but I think it's mostly because this has been my life for the past 16 years since I've been here, but really since 2001, it's been something's gonna happen and then it doesn't. And so I think in order to not get my hopes up and then just to be brought back down, healthy or not, I think that's how I've managed, as I've just said. It's just the next thing, I try to count the blessings that I have.
Yeah.
And I have both of my parents. I have good health. I have a lot of great support. I have a lot of friends, coworkers, a fiance who support me. And so I'm not worried about myself. I'm just I've fallen in love with Crete and Crete High School and students, and that's why I'm crying. It's not about me. Find a way, we'll make it work. It's about leaving here, and that upsets me. Towards the end of last school year, I had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and speak to our senators and our congressmen about the Bridge Act, which is again another temporary thing, but the Bridge Act would allow for basically our Congress, the legislation to vote to keep DACA, which would have avoided a president from just stopping it. It would have to be voted on again and become, it'd have to go through again. And so I went with a group of Nebraska students and people who were already working, professionals. It was 3 of us that went to DC for a day. It was really quick. We went in, talked to them, and then we left the next day. But it's hard too because I mean, I want to be here, you know, and it's every day is you have there's a lot of things that you need to do, and so a lot of those things happen during the school day. It's hard because part of me feels like, am I being selfish by leaving here to go do that? Because that's an interest, a personal interest for me. And am I putting my personal interest above the kids? And so, obviously I know that there's people supporting, and I thank them for what they do, but it puts me in a tough spot too, because that's also not fair to be asking to be leaving for that much, you know, for all those things. And I know that it's not every day, but I don't know, I feel like my effort should be here. You know, I've tried to follow the law, and I feel like I've contributed as much as I can. The DREAM Act, or something similar to it, something that would lead to a pathway to being able to. DACA has been great for me because it's allowed me to be here and do what I do now, but we knew it was a temporary thing. It's a band-aid over a bigger issue, and I know it's complicated, and I don't want to get in. I mean, we can talk about the politics of it, and I don't want to do that, but a DREAM Act or something similar where it would allow for, I think most people, maybe I'm wrong here, but most people don't have a problem with paying a fine, with having to pay the fees. It's not about that. It's if it could lead to something that I could continue to prove that I'm just as American as anybody else. And in my opinion, what that means is having the core values and, you know, being an honest, good person, paying your taxes, following the law, contributing to society, and helping the community be better. If there was a way for me to continue to prove that, and then over time, if I continue to do that, then I'm able to apply for eventually residency and then citizenship. That would be the dream, right? Is the DREAM Act. If the DREAM Act would be something that would allow good people to stay and to prove themselves and to stay and say, look, whether it was a decision that was made by somebody else, but we're here, we're going to come forward, we're trying to contribute to this society, give us an opportunity to prove that that's what we're trying to do, and I think that's what would be best. So it's still like, I don't know if the word is shame, if the word is, you still get kind of apprehensive about it to open up, but for me, I've gotten to the point where it's like, if I don't help people put a face to it,
right,
then people, I think, don't make that connection that it's real. And it's not about me, it's about that there's other people who are still where I was. And that's okay, because I was there for a long time. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, but I've tried to encourage other people to say, look, we have to let them know that we're here, and that we're their neighbors, and that we are their kids as counselors, and we're their teachers, and that we're not maybe what some people think in their head is that we're here just to cause, you know, harm, and that we're just roaming through the streets and we're doing drugs or, you know, those things. And so sometimes I feel like kind of I have a weird, like, I feel like selfish because I don't want to make this about me at all. But I've decided, you know what, this is, when I get these opportunities, and I need to, because this is about a large amount of people, some that I know very, very, very well. And so it's about helping people see that there's a lot of people that are very similar to me and are also contributing to their communities and doing these great things, and that we're not what the president has said that our culture is, and that's why we're here. You know, that we're here because we're just as American as anybody else too.